we've had a tremendous response to the podcast Loyalist, Paramilitary, Gunrunner. Now, when I started that podcast with Frank, we got straight into his crimes and his prison experience. I expected to go back to his earlier years at the end, but we covered so much in that we didn't have time to go back to his earlier years. Lots of people have commented about getting Frank back on, and I'm proud to say that my publishing company, Gadfly Press, out of all the podcast guests we've had on, we've now finally published a book from one of our podcast guests, and Frank's book is the first, and it's called, surprise, surprise, Loyalist, Paramilitary, Gunrunner. And in the description box below this video are links for Frank's stuff, including links for the book, available worldwide on Amazon as Kindle and paperback, and soon the audiobook will be up again. So, thank you very much for coming back on, Frank. And before we just go to your earlier years then, what has it been like since you've come on the podcast? Have you been looking at the comments, and has that affected anything that you've been doing?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I found some of them challenging, a little bit challenging. I don't think that some people would grasp the fact that I wasn't here to put across a political point of view. I wasn't here to try and influence anybody in that sense. If anything, I was trying to deter people from getting themselves into the same situations that I'd got myself into, and certainly the situation of avoiding going to prison, that's for sure. But equally, it did give me quite a lot to think about, if nothing else, what I say today, if nothing else. But no, it was, I think in the main, most people kind of took it for what it was. I was concerned. I didn't want people to think that you were endorsing what I was saying in any way. And I did try to point out that you were, clearly doing a job. You were asking someone who'd been to prison. And I tried to be as honest as I could. And clearly some people would like to hear more, which I don't think is a good idea. And equally, as I say, if you don't tell them everything, they don't think you're sincere and you're quite what you are. And then if you do tell them everything, they go, well, who goes on camera and tells people everything? So I kind of just weighed it up and thought, you know what, some people will enjoy it and some people won't.
Yeah, you can never please all the people all the time. The commenters do get quite crazy at times. But, it's the comments and the subscribers that we do really appreciate. I read, get up, get my breakfast out and start reading the comments and messages and stuff first thing in the morning. And I do appreciate all the support. And if you've not subscribed yet, little subscription box is down there on the right-hand side of this video. So, man, I've just been listening to all the audiobook chapters, so I've just completely gone over all of your earlier years again. And I really like the way you tell it in the audiobook. It's like you're telling it me. It's like it's really good. So, growing up in Kentish Town, North London, what was that like?
It was tough. It was tough, but it was tough for everybody. Not for me individually. It wasn't like everybody else was prospering and I was the poor kid in the street. I think we were all pretty poor. And it was the days of big families. Mine wasn't a particularly big family, but there were some pretty sizable families. And some of the reason for that, because it was quite a big Irish community. And it tended to be 3, 4, sometimes 5 brothers. So it wasn't a surprise that things were hard for people. And certainly my own family, even when I was an only child, it was still a struggle. Clearly more of a struggle once I got, other siblings. But it was tough. It was tough. And I think in this day and age, you're trying to explain to younger people who I've worked with over the years, and they're not having it. They're just, no, sorry. You did not go to school, with holes in your shoes, with a bit of lino cut out or a cornflakes box. They're not having it. They just say, no, come on, there's no way early 70s you was doing that. But that's just the way it was. It was the way it was. and tough kids as well. I hasten to add some very tough kids, and the trouble was there were so many brothers. So even if you was brave enough to stand up to one, you tended to have to worry about the other 2, 3, or 4 that followed behind them. So sometimes it was just best to put your hands up and go, "Look, I'm not a fighter," like, you know.
And your birth father left quite early.
Yeah, I believe that was before I was about 2. I think I was about 2, and I did get another dad quite soon. Probably appreciate him more now because I'm an adult and a bit more mature. But I kind of view it. Well, look, you know, he met my mum. He inherited me. You know, and over the years, there was a bit of a strain. To be honest, there was. You know.
So what was your mum's background and how did she actually meet your birth father? Do you know the history there?
I believe she was born in Bristol. She somehow landed up in a remote village called, I think it's in the Doomsday Book, called Bishop's Canning in Wiltshire. I think she was about 18 and her and a friend cycled to London, you know, the bright lights of London. As far as I'm aware, she very much was in love with my original father. I'm not altogether sure whether he was with her. That's not been made very clear, to be quite honest. What I'll give him credit for is that when they realised it wasn't working, rather than confuse me, he did move out of London. He moved to the Brighton area. I did catch up with him eventually when I was about 40. I think it was about 40. And I was encouraged to go and see him by, ironically, the vicar in the prison. And he said, "How do you feel about him?" And I said, "Well, it does concern me because I don't want him going to his grave feeling that I've borne him a grudge all those years, you know." I did go to see him, and he had 2 sons. That's nice. I'm still in contact with one of them now. That's really nice. And invited him to London and said, "Look, you know, you've got 2 granddaughters and it'd be nice if you could meet them." We went on holiday that year, came back and there was a letter he'd passed away.
Oh.
So as sad as it was, I'm pleased that I at least got the opportunity to go and see him and say, "Listen, you know, there's no hard feelings between us. It's just life. It's just the way it is." You know.
Was he ever aware of your gun running and prison time and all
that? I suspected when I went to his house and I was invited to dinner that the family clearly knew of the past. His wife did tentatively say, did I feel in any way that because I hadn't had my original father, that was some kind of excuse for my wayward behaviour? And I certainly said no, none at all. I take full responsibility for that.
No cop-outs there.
No, none at all.
And then you have a sibling, Debbie.
Yeah, when I got to 7, all of a sudden the sister came on the scene, which, if I'm honest, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. You know, it was another member of the family. But times were hard. I say it was hard. I can remember my mother having 3 jobs and still doing what they used to call back then homework, you know, making things, trying to earn money. My Donnie, who was, you know, my new dad, he was a practical man. He was very good with his hands. You know, he used to fascinate me. He could strip a car down, take a gearbox out of an engine. I couldn't work out how he could put it all back together, to be honest. But he couldn't write a letter. You know, he just could not write a letter. In fact, he would find it difficult to have gone out and worked in an office, that's for sure. But a practical man. And look, I'll say it now, a good man. I just didn't appreciate it at the time. He had some very bad mental health problems. In fact, it sort of was eventually got identified as schizophrenia. And he used to scare the life out of me, quite frankly. He used to, literally scare the life out of me. I don't think my sister ever experienced that. And when I eventually got a brother, he certainly never experienced that degree of fear, you know. And so I don't want to say anything that kind of besmirches his memory that my sister and my brother has, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And if you've not watched Loyalist, Paramilitary, Gunrunner Part 1, that is the top link in the description box below this video if you want to catch up with Frank's prison experience and the level of criminal activity he got involved in. Guns, bombs, assassinations, some of his people he's associated with were involved in. And it gets really heavy, and it's the special branch, MI6, they step in, and that's how it got terminated in the end. So, Sunday school then.
Well, I'll tell you an incident that happened before that. A group of us, gang of us, call it what you will, we were coming home from Saturday morning pictures. And in those days, we used to have a big piece of wasteland, which used to be a coal wharf. It was where the trains used to come from up north and in the Midlands down to London. And there was quite a few coal merchants where I live. In fact, one of them, his family, were big coal merchants. He lives next door to me. So you'd have these vehicles come in, these trains come in, the lorries used to load up. But eventually that industry started to die out. But we loved it. We used to play over there, basically, build camps and all sorts. We also used to ambush the kids from Maitland Park as well after the pictures. So they've forgiven me for now because I see some of them in the pub occasionally. But we were coming home one day and we passed this building. It was a publisher's printers type building and there was a crack in the window. And one of the boys decided to kick the window and finish the job off, like, you know. And in those days, you used to have comics about that big. And they used to be World War One or World War Two, maybe. They're probably World War Two. Romance and Western comics. So we started to take handfuls of them, right? And someone said, "I know, let's go up the market, which is called Queen's Crescent Market. We just call it the Crescent. And why don't we sell them?" You know, we thought we predated Del Boy, basically. You know, so I thought, oh no. All of a sudden, my entrepreneurial brain kicked in. I thought, oh no, I'll go and get me mum's tin bath. We can fill it up, take it down the market, turn it over, and use it as a stall. So this is what we do. So we're standing there. I've remembered all the things I can hear what the stall holders shout at, you know, come on, missus, I'm not asking for 50, Bob. I'm not asking for 30, Bob. I'm not even asking for your uncle, Bob. Like, you know. And all of a sudden, this big hand came on my shoulder. It was the local copper. Well, everyone else had fucked off. No one felt to tell me that the copper had turned up. So he asked who's all the comics. So I said, I don't know. You know, I kind of went really pathetic. I went, I don't know. And he went, well, whose is the bath? And I thought, well, I can't disown my mum's bath. And got marched home. And of course, I got a clump round the ear roll, bringing the police to the door and so on. And, you know. And ironically, the following Sunday, I was sent to Sunday school. So I'm not sure whether that was retribution for what I've done. I suspect later on in life, I thought, hold on. You know, when you get a bit older and you get a girlfriend or you get married, you want a bit of time for yourself, don't you? You know. So looking back on it, I suspect it was more to do with them two wanting a little bit of afternoon delight than it was any strict religious, reasons, But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I quite enjoyed it.
You enjoyed Sunday school?
I quite enjoyed it, yeah. I quite enjoyed it.
What activity did they have you do?
I don't know, but they had this star system. I don't think the stars got you any nearer to heaven necessarily, but I seem to remember there were Saturn, and Neptune and Mars and the better you did, you kind of worked your way around this chart. Look, from our point of view, it was a biscuit and a glass of orange. So it could have been a devil worshippers meeting. If it was a glass of orange and a biscuit, you'd have took it, basically,
So when was the football interest sparked?
Well, I was football mad. There's no doubt about that.
From what age?
Playing. it's probably hard for people to imagine now, take into account there were less cars on the road and there was a lot less to do. So we would literally play football from one side of the road to the other. You know, the walls, the gable walls were the goals. So you'd get a piece of chalk and you'd mark it up. And I can't believe so many kids used to just play, 50 yards, a game of football in 50 yards. But we were all incredibly football mad, And if you take into account, we take it for granted now because you can put the telly on. There's so many games of football. Well, back then there wasn't. In fact, it was like you had a television. Never mind watching it on the television. So to see it and appreciate it, you had to go to the games. And if I'm honest, I can't even remember the first. I'm quite ashamed of it, really. I can't remember the first game I ever went to. I can remember the first away game I went to. I can't actually remember the first home game, but it would have been the late 60s. I'd have thought. I thought it would have been about the late 60s. And the bug just hit me. It was just the atmosphere that, I was completely sold on it. And I think I was 14 and I was at school, and my old man used to work for British Rail. Used to have another company, subsidiary company called Freightliners, and he was entitled to free tickets, train tickets, but you couldn't use them on the football special. So I'd have to get the train before the football specials, which wasn't ideal because when you got to that station, there was usually hundreds of skinheads waiting for you. And you was one of the few who got off that particular train, so that wasn't ideal. But I went to Manchester. I went to Manchester. Typical Manchester weather, pouring down with rain. I was 14. I was 14 at the time. And I remember going into Woolworths to get out of the rain. And I swear even the girls behind the counters, they seemed hostile. It was almost as if they knew I was a Cockney, I was from London. I did have a scarf on, by the way. I did have a navy and white scarf on. Got on the bus, went to what was then called, it was Main Road then, obviously Etihad Stadium now, but it was Main Road then. Went in the first turnstile, big mistake. Walked up the stairs, went onto this big terraced area. And in those days, there was skinheads, and Manchester City fans used to wear Levi jackets, but bleached, so that it was the same colour as their players' shirts. So it was sky blue, so they would bleach the jean jackets and the jeans to as sky blue as you could get. And then they had sky blue and white scarves on. Silly bollocks walks in with a navy blue, white scarf on. I was probably weighed about 10 stone 7. I was this skinny little kid. I got so much abuse, it was unbelievable. And this song about hating Cockneys and so on. And this copper come out of nowhere, punched this skinhead, dragged me by the collar, took me down to the corner flag and made me stand with a bloke with his 2 kids. And we lost 4-0. Lost 4-0. I think I gave it 10 minutes towards the end, and I thought, do you know what? I'm getting out of here. Got on a bus, got back to Piccadilly Station, and I suddenly got surrounded by these skinheads, and they wanted my scarf. And I thought, I can't go to school on Monday without my scarf. I just couldn't do it. And in those days, the shoes that were very popular were like a loafer. They were called Salatios. They had the tassels on the front. And they kept and I ran. Fortunately, I did run for my school at the time. So I ran, and I remember them sliding up and down at the back. And I got into the station. And eventually, I come across about a couple of dozen of these sort of Tottenham skinnies, all older, sort of 20 years of age. And they, "Oh, you all right, mate?" They said, "You okay?" I said, "Oh, I've just been chased, by these Man City supporters." These City supporters came into the station, and they basically set about, and one of them got put through a plate glass window. I think it was like a phone box. And the police just wanted to get everybody on a train. So I was lucky. So I happened to go back on the football special with all these older blokes. So I go into school on Monday, and everyone's like, "Oh, great, everyone forgot we'd lost 4-0. it was just the fact that I'd met up with all these older skinheads. And the following week, a couple of mates come over to Tottenham. We walked past the pub, and of course there's all these 20-year-old skinheads standing outside the pub. And as I walked past, they went, "All right, Frank, how are you? Good up in Manchester last week, wasn't it?" My mates are like, I'm an hero, ain't I?
Yeah.
How do you know them? I'll then give it the big and done. I was with them up in Manchester last week, wasn't I? Like, not, I was scared out of my wits. I sort of put this persona on that I was, I'm one of the boys, But come unstuck regularly because I actually started to believe I was one of the boys. It didn't work.
So you joked about your entrepreneurial skills earlier, but you did in fact get your hustle on as a teenager, had a few little jobs.
To make money where you lived in those days, you would do things like you either what would you do? You'd pull the stalls out down the market, for example, down the Crescent. Everybody seemed to go through the paperboy stage. You had a paper round, and that usually turned out to be the chap who used to do the papers. He'd go out the back, you'd have a bag with the papers. Oh, that's nice. I'll have a box of roses. I'll have a dirty magazine. A bottle of Corona cream soda. All went in the bag. And you went round the flats and sat on the steps and read the magazine and, ate your chocolates. And somewhere in between it, you delivered the papers, we were quite fortunate. Well, fortunate on the one hand, but they basically, our community got ripped apart. They pulled all these houses down, perfectly good houses. Some of them are still standing now where I live. They only had to put radiators in there and bulbs, decent plumbing, and they were perfectly good houses. But they decided to pull all these out. About 5 or 6 streets they pulled down, which from our point of view was great because every time somebody moved out of a house, you went in and any excess furniture, any ornaments, mantle clocks, that type of thing, we all took them down to Junkie John down the Crescent and got money for it. And then we started to, we learnt the value of lead, copper, cast iron, brass. And my old man used to take it down to Arbuckles down St Pancras Way and we'd get money for it, So we broke the suspension on his car because we overloaded it and he wasn't very pleased about that. But we kind of learnt ways of making money, yeah.
And apart from experiencing violence through the football, there was things going on the streets, and you got this ambush of the kids from the Maitland Park estate.
Oh no, we ambushed them.
Yeah, you ambushed them.
Oh,
yeah.
We definitely ambushed them. Yeah, we still talk about that in the pub to this day. Yeah, we definitely used to ambush them. And how we and funny enough, how we never killed each other, I'm not really sure because. So we used to build camps on the the sort of the wasteland sort of thing, the waste ground, and you sat all night, you protected them in case they came round and burnt it out, and But we'd throw bricks at each other, we'd throw slates at each other. I'm really not sure how we didn't really do ourselves, some really serious damage. But that was our entertainment. That's what it was all about. As I said in the book, we didn't have Game Boys in them days. You didn't have that sort of thing. You went out and you made your own entertainment.
So you went into a care home at 10. Your sister was 3.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
I think that was a case because my mother was genuinely ill, and I don't think the social services felt that my dad was capable. That may have had something to do with his mental health condition, So they put us in this home, and they sent me to a school. And ironically, the school had a lot of deaf kids in it for some reason. Don't know what that was, but it was I think it was just the nearest school. But I do remember one incident. As I say, my sister was only 3, and she clearly didn't know what was going on. And one morning she was sobbing her heart out. Wanted to say goodbye to me before I went to this school. And I remember you had to call them aunties. You had to call these women aunties. And I remember saying, "Can I just say goodbye to my sister?" And they wouldn't have it. I was, what can you do as a 10-year-old? And I look back on it now, and I swear there were probably things that went on in that place that I just probably didn't realise.
What is the place like? Is it just a house? Or?
A big house, yeah, a very big house. Probably God knows how much it'd be worth on the market now. And it's quite strange because I can still remember the number of the door I go by it. I've driven by it every time I've driven by it as a grown man, and there's an horrible feeling comes over me about that house. I can remember things where a child would say, please, can I have some more bread and butter, please? And the aunties wouldn't give it because you'd said please twice. You had to either say, please, could I have a bit of bread and butter? Or can I have some bread and butter, please? You couldn't say please. And, and I think, come on, what was there's clearly things that went on. I think they scarred me to a certain degree, because there's something about it, when I go past, it sparks me off, and I think, hold on. Probably just as well I don't remember, if I'm honest. It's probably just as well I don't remember. I'll probably go and burn it down if I did, to be honest. So there you are.
Did you go back to your family then at some point?
Yeah, I think an aunt looked after us for a while as well. It wasn't years. I mean, come on, I'm not gonna over-egg it. I'm not gonna exaggerate it. It might have been a couple of months, but it certainly affected me. God knows what it did. I'm hoping my sister was so young that she doesn't really remember much about it. And we've had a discussion about it, to be quite honest.
Just put it behind you.
Yeah.
So in school then, you said secondary school was quite tough, but you had a fight that earned you a reputation.
Yeah, in primary school, I was, I was a bright kid. There's no doubt about it. But you wasn't getting, there weren't gangs then, was there? It's primary school, and I done quite well. And bless her, my old mum, she sent me to a school called Sir William Collins because it had a Sir in it, so she assumed it was posh. It could not have been in the worst area. The area is called Somers Town, and it was notorious. I mean, it was notorious. There was a pub there called the Lord Somers, and the nickname was the Bucket of Blood, because the governor used to come out in the morning with a mop and bucket and mop the blood up, And I remember when I was about 15, there was a Sunday magazine, and it had the 5 or 6 toughest streets in the UK, and the street the school was in, Charlton Street, was one of the streets. It was mentioned. Charlton Street was mentioned. Really tough. Lots of flats. It was an area where, obviously because of St Pancras, King's Cross, and Euston, you had really tough men who came to build the railways. So you had Irish, Scottish, Geordies, Scousers, and then tough Cockney fellas in the mix as well. Big families, and you went in the first year, done really well. Second year, done really well, academically. Then if you fell out with someone, you was in trouble, because there were 4 or 5 brothers waiting for you after school, and probably 10 cousins. Yeah, so I didn't necessarily try to get in with specific people. I definitely tried to avoid them if I could. And I wasn't someone that went looking for trouble, far from it. And if anything, I was probably the class clown. That was a kind of defensive mechanism, And just out of the blue one day, we were in the changing room, after doing PE, physical education, and I had a pair of Tottenham football socks. We were that poor, I couldn't even afford the shorts and the shirt, so I had to be content with the socks. And for some reason, these kids got hold of the socks. They were sort of tied up together in a bundle and started throwing them around. And it's stupid running around the dressing room, or the changing room. And I lost the plot. And of all the kids to have the socks in his hands was this one particular kid that everybody had a lot of respect for, had a lot of time for him. I don't think I ever see him have a fight, to be honest. He was one of those kids who didn't have to prove it by actually physically having a fight. He was always smart. If people had a school blazer, his was a tailored jacket. If you was lucky to have a pen and a pencil, he had a bag. He'd have what would they call it? A typical ballpoint pen. I forget what they call them.
Fountain pen.
He'd have the lot. Basically, he had the full kit. He had the full Monty, and if you came back after a school holiday and the teacher went, "Oh, Frank, where you been?" "Oh, we went to a caravan in Great Yarmouth." He'd been skiing. So I suppose there was a little bit in me of like, you flash git, like, you know what I mean? Well, he happened to land up with these socks. I went into blind rage. And all I can remember is having him on the floor with my hands around his neck. And he obviously let go of the socks. And then people pulled me off. And of course, he's going to kill me after school. That was the bottom line. And I was advised by what few friends I had, don't go out the back gate. Don't. He's going to kill you, And it went on for the rest of the day. He's going to kill me. He's going to kill me. And school kids being school kids, everyone felt obliged to stay behind after school and watch me get beaten up. And I came out, and it was no bravado on my part, I can assure you. And I just came out, and he was standing there, and I thought, he's going to hit me, let me just get on with it, sort of thing. And he stood there, and he kept verbally threatening me. And I thought, hold on, he's not exactly got around to hitting me yet, has he? And I thought, why don't I just take a chance? Why don't I just hit him? And I did. And he fell on the floor. and I'm not sure who was more shocked, him, me, or the audience. So I'm not really sure who was the most shocked. But it was crazy because he didn't even get up. He didn't threaten me in any way. And of course, when I went into school the next day, I was suddenly Mr. Popular. I got invited to youth clubs. "Oh, Frank, someone's having a party on Saturday. Would you like to come along?" And for a few weeks, I did milk it, if I'm honest. Then you realise every lunatic in the school now wants to take you on, don't they? So my reign as, being Mr. Big didn't last very long. And, I got battered a couple of times, basically. But it did at least say to me, well, you've stood up once. Why would you ever back down again? So, I kind of did learn that, there was something about me that I didn't realise that I had inside me,
A philosophy that you applied later in your life in prison when you
certainly
became the Baptist.
Most certainly, yes.
The jug man.
Yeah.
So you were interested in sports then, and you did the triple jump.
Yeah, and the 440 metres. And I've got to say this, the power of teachers, and what they can do for you, which I clearly didn't appreciate at the time. And we had this new sports teacher, and one day he said, "Right, I'm going to make you all run around the outside of the school." He knew roughly what the distance was. He said, "I'm going to time you." Well, we all ran, we ran around the first corner and went, "Oh, fuck it, we ain't running. Who do you think we are?" And, of course, he timed it. So he knew we hadn't run. He knew we'd just walked around at, our own pace. And he basically said to us, "I don't care if we're here all night." He said, "You're running around there and doing a decent time." So in the end, you thought, "Oh, sod it, we better do it, get on with it." And once you're in a race, you want to win it, don't you? You don't want to be last. So I happened to come round the corner first. And this teacher said to me, he said, "You realise you're only so many seconds behind the kid who does the 440 metres for the school?" I seriously was not interested. Seriously not interested. But then he started saying, "Oh, we go and compete against other schools." And I thought, is this a way of getting out of maths? Is this a way of avoiding chemistry? Kind of. And I thought, yeah, I'll give it a go. And eventually I did. I was running with the school. And then he asked me to have a go at doing the triple jump, the hop, skip and jump. And I landed up representing the school with that. And by the time I'd gotten to the fourth year, he'd introduced me to running to the trials to run for London. And I landed up being the reserve for London. But then I left school. So I'll never.
Did you lose interest then in the academic side?
No, it was more a case because of the family that I had, and as I say, we weren't particularly well off, and I could see the strain on my parents. I could see it was really, really difficult, and I thought, you know what, I think I need to get out there and try and at least look after myself, at least take the strain off of them, but at least being in a position to look after myself. And
by what means were you going to do that?
I wasn't entirely sure. There wasn't a master plan. But in those days, jobs were quite easy to come by, to be quite honest. I think people to this day will look back the sort of 70s, and you could leave a job on a Friday and have had yourself a new one by Monday. And there were jobs where young people could go and find work, you know. And bless her, my mum came up to school one night, and she sat in front of this teacher, and he said, "Oh, well, do you mind me asking who you are?" And she said, "I'm Frankie's mum." And he went, "Frankie who?" And she said, "Frankie Portinari." And he said, "I've never met your son." And of course, as she did the rounds, none of these teachers had actually met me. So when she got home, I mean, to say she was annoyed was an understatement. And in the end, I had to cough for it and go, "Mum, where do you think you're getting them chickens from? And them chops every now and again?" I was working in Dewhurst Butcher's there, Camden High Street. She didn't know I'd left school. She didn't know I'd left school. So yeah, there was a necessity to do, and I regret. You know, I do. I regret it. I've mentioned it in the last, but I regret it big time. Regret it big time.
Did you enjoy working in the butchers?
No, hated it.
What was your job?
I can remember separating fat.
How did you do that? Just shopping?
And they just, well, no, I was no skilled butcher, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But it was just cleaning up after other people, scrubbing the blocks, you know, the blood off the blocks, going into freezing cold freezers at, you know, probably 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. That wasn't fun. But you thought you was an adult, you know. I was, 14 and a half, 15. You just thought you was a man, didn't you? You thought you was the same as all the other blokes that worked there. I can't actually remember cutting a piece of meat. I think they might have had me scraping some meat, you know, of what they'd left on the bones, maybe. I think I made some beef burgers once in a machine. That was it. That was about as skillful as I got, you know.
And you met your wife at an unbelievably early age, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, 15, yeah, 1972.
How did that come about then?
Well, there was her and 4 sisters, and she came past the football pitch one day, and I could just see she was different. I thought, this is not one of the local girls, albeit she was one of the local girls. But I definitely felt there was something about her, and I thought, that's definitely a bit of me. I didn't think I had any chance, no chance whatsoever. And she says, apparently, I casually said to her, almost like, you know, I don't really care whether you do or you don't, but if you fancy it, you know, if you want to come down my house and play records, because that was the big thing in those days, you know, a little record player, high fidelity record player, you know. And apparently she said, I said it quite coolly, like, you know, if you want to, like, it's up to you, like, you know, I don't really care. And she said, yeah, and I couldn't believe it. She could not believe that this, you know, this really good looking girl, you know, I think my mates definitely didn't believe it. And yeah, I just one day, you know, casually sort of, she swears blind I never actually asked her out. I as good as told her we were going out. But I can remember an incident, you know, where my mates came and, you know, banged on the door. I've mentioned you didn't have bells in them days, you know, you had a knocker. And they come and knock. That's why I say he knocked on the door. And it was, Frank, you're coming out to, you know, football. That was our life, was football, playing football. Frank, you're coming out to play football. And I'm like, no. Got a bird in here. You know? And they called me a puff. They called me a puff. Because if you're not going out to play football, you've got to be a puff, ain't you? And I'm thinking, and looking back, and I thought, you didn't really get that, fellas, did you? Like, I've got a girl in here, like, you know, where's your girls? You're the puffs, not me. You know, but yeah, I remember that quite vividly, yeah, them calling me that. Yeah.
And you changed job a few times in your teens.
Yeah, because different jobs, it might have only been a couple of quid difference, but then 2 quid was a big difference in those days. And I got a job in, someone offered me a job. A mate of mine had to go at the ball store, that was it. And his dad come and knocked on my door and said, listen, they've said they'll keep his job open. Will you go and do the job? And I said, yeah, of course I will. And I landed up in a warehouse for about 3 years.
Wow.
And the old entrepreneurial skills kicked in there because I think there wasn't a fiddle that I didn't know. In fact, I probably invented most of them.
What were the fiddles?
It was basically you had to get stuck on the back of of a van, or lorries and so on.
Yeah.
And I to this day, I believe that the owners of the company, it was a food importers and exporters. I actually believe they paid such low wages because they knew that people were on had fiddles going.
Yeah.
And if they didn't, why would this bloke be standing for 3 years? Why would this teenager be standing his job for 3 years if he wasn't making enough money? And as I say, there were very few fiddles that I don't think I had kind of invented.
How did it feel to gain a new brother at 19 years old?
Shock. I didn't think my mum and dad even slept together. Never mind. You know what I mean? They were so busy arguing with each other. I didn't think they ever got round to having sex, to be quite honest. Yeah, it was a big shock. There's no doubt about that. And it was subtly put. My old man Donny said to me one day, have you got a jacket you can borrow me? And I said, well, yeah, what do you want to borrow that for? But me and your mother's getting married on Friday. Just like as casual as that, we're getting married on Friday. I didn't know they weren't married. I assumed they were married. And then not long after that, I found out why they was getting married, obviously. Because all of a sudden, this brother came on the scene, and it's a shame because 19 years difference, so we haven't really been like brothers, we haven't grown up together, which is we keep in touch. It's only around the corner from me, which is nice, but yeah, it didn't actually feel like having a brother, to be honest.
So your interest in football, your passion led to an early arrest.
Well, no, I got away with it quite a long time actually. I got away with it quite a lot, and and then one day, of course, fate plays its part, and we were playing Arsenal, and all their boys came up the road, and shouting and singing, and as they passed the pub, it just kicked off big time. And want of a better way of putting it, I got stuck in like everybody else did, and all of a sudden I was nicked, and I got taken to Tottenham police station, obviously slung in a cell. After the game had finished, I got let out. I didn't know the score. And I happened to ask people as they what was the score, and Arsenal had beaten us 5-0. And I got nicked again. And I remember the cop had taken me into the station, and it was the same desk sergeant. And he stood there and he looked at me and went, I've had you once today already, haven't I? And I went, yeah, mate, yeah, you have. And fair play to him, what he'd done is he put me in a cell for an hour, let all the crowd go. And he said, look, I think you're in enough trouble. And he let me go. So it was just the one charge. I thought, oh, God, can you imagine going home to your girlfriend and saying I got nicked not once, twice in the same day? And back then, I remember going to Lordship Magistrates Court in Tottenham, and it was £25 fine, which was not a lot, but it was enough. My mate got £50 because he'd had a previous offence, and it was quite some time before I got arrested again, but then it was sort of like a bit of a sequence. I seem to keep getting arrested, but by the same time, the police got to know you as well. So,
So in the book, then, there's quite a lot of crazy stories of football activity in this country and overseas. Any of those stories you can describe?
Some of my mates said to me, I think they were a little bit disappointed because I actually admitted that I got patched up. And I said, well, hold on, you can't, if you're going to be honest, you got to tell it as it is. And there was an occasion when we played Arsenal, and we were fighting again, and Arsenal had gone into our stadium, went into the same end, and I shouldn't have done that. Me and a few other fellas kicked off again. The police broke it up, threw everybody out. I thought I was being smart. Made out somebody had hit me. And the cop went, oh, go on, away you go. And I went to the toilet. Bad move. Because some of these Arsenal fellas had seen me go to the toilet. And the next thing I knew, I woke up in a cubicle, dazed, and the first thing I did was sort of make sure I had both my ears. I thought, in case one of them fancies a trophy or something, Got up and didn't realise at the time I had concussion. eventually I had to call her to St John's ambulance fella, and they put me in an ambulance, took me to North Middlesex Hospital. And you don't realise how cruel you are, because there was an Arsenal supporter in the ambulance, and he was screaming in agony. And I remember saying to this fella, "What's the matter with him?" He said, "We think he said we think he might have appendicitis. If we don't get him to the North Middlesex Hospital quick enough, he might die." I said, "Oh, fuck him." I can't believe I said that. In this day now, but you were so bitter back then. Obviously didn't mean it, did I? Clearly did.
I appreciate your honesty.
But at the time, it was that was the kind of mindset. You thought, fuck him, he's Arsenal, isn't he? Like, he wasn't another human being, but clearly he was. I went to the hospital. I waited so long to see a doctor in it. I just got a cab and went home. I just went home, And I remember my wife, now guilt-ridden, then saying, "That's it. That's your lot. You're not going anymore. That's it there." And I knew the following week we was playing Manchester United away, and you had to go. You could not go. You had to show face. And the Friday night before, we went to see Chaz and Dave at the Dominion Tottenham Court Road. Me, two mates, and the three girlfriends. So we go in, we recognise one of the security staff, Colin, who goes over Tottenham. So we're going to watch this Chaz and Dave. They're up there. I'm singing along, I'm enjoying myself. All of a sudden, a bloke behind me went, "Here, mate," he said, "I fucking paid to hear Chaz and Dave, not you." I thought, right. So I turned around, there was a group of them there, and I said, "Listen, you miserable cunt." I said, "That's what they want you to fucking do, join in and sing. That's what it's all about." Well, by now, my wife's nails were in my leg. They're like, And one of my pals, he was a bit volatile, to say the least. So it gets to half time. I thought, you know what, go to the toilet, calm yourself down. Well, as I come back, the lights are going down. I can see somebody has got someone up against the wall and they're punching them. And there's obviously something going on in the audience as well. My mate's got this fella up against the wall. He told me afterwards, he said, "Frank, I wasn't having the key to talk to you like that." So it's all kicked up. I run down, I join in. Security will turn up. This Colin turns up. He went, "Fuck me." He went, "It's got to be a couple of thousand people here." He went, "I might only be you, mob." So he took us upstairs into the top circle. And there was two empty rows at the back. He went, "Now listen, you can sing, dance, fucking beat yourselves up." He said, "I couldn't care less, So, and afterwards, we said, "Oh, sorry about that, Cole." We went, "You're all right." And he asked us if we wanted to go backstage and meet Chaz and Dave. So we get to this door, bloke on the door, I don't think he quite said, "Who do you know?" But that was the insinuation, like as if to say, which, And Dave just happened to look out. And I went, "Hello, son, how's it going? Dave, how's it going?" You do that to anyone, they're not going to be rude, are they? So they invite us in. We had a drink with a couple of hours. Of course, on the way out, I couldn't resist it. I said to the fellow, "By the way, mates, I'd never fucking seen him before in my life." And my missus went, "Holy chap." So anyway, I did go, because we had a good night, I did talk her around, and I did happen to go to Old Trafford the next day. I got away with it. But yeah.
And what was the craziest stuff that happened at these overseas games?
Don't. I should imagine the maddest one I can remember. I mean, there was lots of fights, lots of, I think England fans had a bad reputation, and a well-deserved bad reputation, by the way. And the trouble is, once you're involved in it, there's an expectation you've got to be there. Because if a certain group of you are going, everyone else will go. So we went to, we sorted our own coach out, and we went to Munich. I'm trying to work this out. Was it Munich or Frankfurt? But we stopped off in Cologne. Whatever happened, we stopped off in Cologne. And we split up, 12 in one bar, 12 in another bar. So we walk in and there's a woman in charge. She's behind the bar. And she says, "Don't drink this beer, this lager, very strong German lager." It's a challenge, isn't it? 12 pints of that. 12 pints of that, love. 12 pints of that, strong lager there. So we're knocking this lager back anyway. So, and there's about 3 or 4 birds sitting in the corner. My mate went up to get a box of matches. Or do you remember the old penny book match you used to. It was just a piece of cardboard with matches in it. And I noticed one of these women looked up, and I'd been talking to a Dutch lorry driver called Peter. I see them. I went, "What's all that about?" And he went, "Oh," he said, "you know, in London," he said, "you're Soho," he said, "and King's Cross." I said, "Oh, they're brasses." He went, "Yes, prostitutes," he said. I said, "Oh." So a bit more time's gone by, we're having a drink, have a bit more drink, and I thought I'll have a bit of mischief here. So I went over to the jukebox, and our old 5p pieces were the same size as a German mark. So I'm looking on the thing, got it. Olivia Newton-John, let's get physical. So I've put this on 2 or 3 times. Well, of course, the silly mates are all pissed now. Don't forget, we've been drinking all the way on this coach as well. So you only needed a couple of pints of this German lager to top you up. They're all up dancing, aren't they, now? Got the attention of the birds, aren't they? Now they start having a trade up, don't they? So one after the other, the boys are paying their money. They had a flat across the road. These girls had a flat across the road. So they're all creeping off of them. All of a sudden, I thought, I've got to go to the cars. My stomach was playing me up. So I go out to the toilet. There's no toilet roll, is there? I'm now having to come back and trying to explain to this German woman, don't need a toilet roll. I don't speak German, do I? Her English is decent. So I use hand signals. So I use my hand to point round that I need a toilet roll. She screams like a lunatic. She thinks I want to do her up the bottle, doesn't she? So she shouts whatever she shouts out in German. All of a sudden, these big German fellas come running around from the other bar. What's left of my mates jump up, picking the glasses up, picking stools up. It's going to be World War III, isn't it? You know. He's sitting there laughing, the Dutch fella. He thinks it's hilarious. So I say, "What's happening, Pete, for fuck's sake?" I said, what are you laughing about? He says, "She thinks you want to..." I'm going to her. No. So he explains it to her. She starts laughing. And it's all okay. She gets me a toilet roll. I'm happy. And fair play to the woman, she got us all a drink as well. She did get us all. That could have turned very, very nasty, to be quite honest. You know.
Was there a moment that did turn very nasty in the mix of this football violence for you?
Oh, I remember going to Rotterdam, and Feyenoord had quite a nasty reputation. And we knew where their, what we'd call in those days, their end, you know, their popular end, where their equivalent of us would stand. And they certainly had a reputation for knives and so. In fact, prior to the game, this must have been about 84 maybe, and they actually found a bomb in not a left luggage thing, like, you know, where you'd store your bags, in the main station, ready to use against us. That's how crazy these Dutch were, these Feyenoord fans. And we got it into our heads that we're going in their end. We're going to go in their end. And we did. And I remember I had an umbrella. So when it all kicked off, I'm like John Steed, and I'm like the Avengers. I'm like this, you know, I'm winning, and I think it's great. No one's coming near me. All of a sudden, this bloke's come flying. One's got an axe, and one's got a sword. That's it, a football match. And I just thought, fuck that. And I've never seen so many tools pulled. The knives just came out everywhere, and there was a surge, and it pushed us all down. It's on YouTube. You can see it quite clearly. You can see one bloke stabbing someone in the back.
The video is on YouTube.
It's on YouTube. Yeah,
do you know what it's called? People are going to look for this.
Of that particular incident, and because there were so many of them, it pushed us down to the front, and we had to get onto the pitch. What people didn't realise was where they thought they was getting punched in the side and getting punched, they were actually being stabbed, and more than one of my mates got stabbed. I've never seen anything as bad as that. And outside, it was just pure mayhem. A mate of ours had gone missing. We knew he'd been stabbed, and we went round to the local hospital to try and pick him up. And you walked in this hospital, and there was a corridor, and there was beds on wheel or trolleys. They were trolleys, and there was Feyenoord fans one side, and there were Tottenham fans the other side. And we saw our mate at the end of the corridor and shouted, I won't say his name, I don't want to embarrass him, but we shouted at Jimmy was called Jimmy. We shouted out to him, Jimmy, come on, mate, and all that. He got off of his trolley, and as he ran up the corridor passing the final fans, he was stabbing them. And I thought, hold on, we're going to get seriously banged up here. So we went out to the hospital. Some of us dived in a bar, and the others stuck him on just an ordinary Tottenham supporters coach just to get him out of the way, you know. But yeah, that's the worst I've ever seen. That's definitely the worst I've ever seen.
What was the worst injury you ever sustained?
It was that game against Arsenal where I landed up concussion. We're very lucky.
That was the worst, yeah.
I've never touch wood, you know, I've never been stabbed. I did have an incident once in the old in Camden Town, the old music machine. I had so many names, I'm losing track. It used to be called the Music Machine. Then it was the Camden Palace. I think now it's called Coco's. A few of us was in there one night, all local Tottenham fellas. Someone said the Little Highbury mob were upstairs. They was all Arsenal. And I was a little bit too keen. Ran up the stairs. And I'll say this to young fellas now, don't ever run round a blind corner because you don't know what's waiting for you. And I ran round the corner and this fella had, remember the old pint glasses, the dimpled pint glasses, really heavy duty. And as I ran round this corner, this fella went, wallop, right on my jaw. And I went down like a sack of spuds. Then they all came charging down the stairs. So they sort of stampeded over me. And I got up. The only advantage I had then was by the time I got down the stairs, they all had their back to me. So I kind of steamed in. But the next morning, it felt like, I said in the book, it felt like a ventriloquist dummy in my jaw. I just felt like it was hanging off. You know, but fortunately, it wasn't. But that was probably the worst injury I've ever had. Thankfully, it wasn't a broken jaw. No.
Did any of your crew get killed?
No, remarkably not. No, considering the level of violence at some of them football matches, someone I casually knew got shot and dead when Tottenham played in the final against Anderlecht, and we were in Brussels, and it all kicked off in a bar. And whether it was the governor of the pub or a barman, I can't remember now, but he shot one of our lot. I think it was a shotgun.
Just killed him right there.
Just killed him right there, yeah. Just killed him right there. And then just down the road there was like a hardware shop, and it was like a swarm of locusts at this shop because all the shovels, brooms, pickaxe handles just got taken out of this shop and off the front of this shop, and it was absolute mayhem. But no, thankfully, I've not lost a good mate, you know.
Was the risk of injury part of the attraction?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Especially when you were younger, because if you went up north in those days, you know, they were tough places. You know, you went to Manchester, Liverpool, Newcastle, Sunderland, Middlesbrough. They were tough industrial cities with hard people, and as far as they were concerned, we were Southern softies. You know, we were flash cockney cunts as far as they was concerned. We all thought they was mugs. They clearly had the advantage because they was at home and there was so many of them. And sometimes the minute you get off of a train and you left the station, there was just hundreds of people. So to get home safely was a bit of an achievement. And people would say, "God, you never went to Newcastle last week, did you?" Yeah, of course I did. Of course I went. You know, and it was a bit of a badge on it. And I'm sure for them as well. I'm sure, you know, when they used to come down to London, that there was probably that buzz as well that you'd gone, survived, and got back home again in one piece.
What was the most fun part and dangerous part before the match, or after?
Well, certainly in the early 70s, football was 7 days a week. No sooner one game was over, you was planning on what you were going to do the next week. Everywhere you went, any pub where I lived, there was the Mitre, that was the Tottenham pub. The Oak was the Arsenal pub. You didn't go in that pub. You know, there were places you would, if you went you went to the Lyceum or somewhere like that, you knew it was going to kick off because West Ham would be in there, Millwall would be in there, Chelsea would be in there. So it was a 7-day-a-week existence. That's all. There's someone at the moment, I will mention him because he has sort of coined the phrase. There's one of the Chelsea boys. He's written a book, and he's recently appeared on a podcast as well.
It's the Foot Soldier.
And no. I'll think of his name in a minute. I don't know why I can't think of his name. Jason Mariner, and he's probably the first person I know who described it as a drug. And I think he rightly says that if you're a drug addict, you can go and get treatment. If you've got a gambling problem, addiction, you can go and get treatment. But if you're a football hooligan, there's no treatment, is there? You're just a thug. You're just a football hooligan. But I don't think people used to appreciate what a drug it was. It was definitely an adrenaline rush that you got going to football. I think that's whether you actually went just to watch a game. I think the atmosphere, the thrill of watching the game, seeing your heroes, that probably did give you a bit of an adrenaline rush. But nothing like meeting up that morning, plotting up what you was going to do, waiting for the other mob to turn up, or if you was going to wake up. I would honestly say there's nothing like it. Nothing like it. And very, very difficult to break. Very, very difficult to break. Because once you get that reputation as well, you start living up to it. And even now, I sometimes feel a little, I'll never get involved again. Never, ever get involved again. But I still recognise it. So
some people would say football hooligans are psychopaths. Some people would say tribalism has always existed, whether it's football, religion, or whatever.
Yep.
Men have always gathered and
Mods
charged at each other.
Mods and rockers. See, my old man used to say, you're a fucking idiot. What do you want to go fighting at football for? I went, you weren't a rocker, then? You never used to go down, down to Sapling and Brighton and Clacton and fight with all the mods? Oh, yeah, that was different, wasn't it? Oh, was it? No, it was a gang. Where we lived, youth clubs fought against other youth clubs. Different areas did go and fight against different areas. So it always existed. Schools fought against schools. So the mentality was always still, that gang mentality was always there. And the football thing was I suppose it was new, wasn't it? Because we'd heard our older friends, and in some cases even parents, who'd been part of the mods and rockers think Teddy boys. They were, they carry cutthroat razors and so on. So they were kind of saying to us, no, it's stupid. We thought, well, hold on, you've had your fun and games. This is our time. We're going to have our fun and games. And all through that period, it was happening all the time. You had punks fighting with Teddy boys. We used to go down to the music machine. We were just local fellas. You had punk night. If you went down there punk night, all the Teds would be waiting outside for them. You went down there on, rockabilly night, the punks would be waiting outside. We didn't give a fuck. We bashed everybody up. We couldn't care less. Soul night, we went down there. We bashed all them. We didn't care. It was our manner, so to speak. We've quite a bit of fight anyone. But so it was always going on. I suppose it was just a case of which culture did you identify with and decide to go with,
Were you tooled up all the time, or did you feel the need on occasion to be tooled up?
Personally, I never. And I've never really approved of this, carrying knives. I certainly didn't want to kill anybody. Let's put it that way. That was never my intention. I think you give someone a right-hander, you're entitled to get a right-hander back. And invariably, what used to happen a lot, especially when it was, hundreds onto hundreds, you'd punch someone, you get 2 punches from somebody else. You couldn't even see him. It was from behind or... No, the tool thing wasn't my... I thought that was cowardly, to be quite honest. And there's been some horrendous stories of where people have used knives. In fact, I hate to say it, there was one fella, I don't even know what club he was associated with, but they got hold of him and someone carved an S that was in his back or on his chest for spurs. And I thought, no, hold on, that's not... I don't remember that being the rules of the game. I did use it, I didn't actually use it on anybody, but we decided we wasn't going to go to a particular match. We was playing the Queen's Park Rangers away, and we thought, you know what, we can't be bothered to go over to Shepherd's Bush. And we was all in a pub over Bethnal Green having a drink. But then one of our mad roofing mates decided to let off a CS canister in the pub. So we all had to come outside, and we thought, well, fuck me, we can't go back in the pub now. So we saw a bloke down the road, and he was cleaning his van. So someone said, come, let's give him a couple of quid, ask him to drop us off at Shepherd's Bush. Arsenal was playing at home, and we tried to get him to come back past Arsenal's ground so we could ambush a few of them, but he wasn't having it. So we get to Shepherd's Bush, going on off licence, get a few cans a bit. We're walking down the road, dozen of us maybe, but we're in twos and threes. We didn't have a lot of respect for QPR, if I'm honest. Big mistake, silly mistake. Too blasé. Got to this junction, and I don't know, 10, 15 young black fellas come round the corner. We knew they was QPR. And all of a sudden they pulled out all these tools. And if I'm honest, I think we thought our reputation was good enough that we'd just go on, fuck off. And they would. A load more come round the corner. They weren't going anywhere. And more luck than judgment, there was a skip. And some of the boys had, half bricks and whatever. And there was a pile of sand. And there was a shovel in the sand. So I picked the shovel up, run down the road at them. And I can remember the old Desert Boots had just made a bit of a comeback. And they was all shouting, go on, Rummel. Like Rummel in the desert because of the sand, like, in the Desert Boots. Go on, Rummel. And I ran down the road. And I'm pleased I didn't actually hit anyone with a shovel because a couple come round on an horse and dispersed everybody, and it all sort of faded out. But if it had come to it, I'd have had to have done, because one of my pals got stabbed only a little bit in the arm, and but no, I didn't actually use the shovel.
So some of the young people watching this might not be familiar with old school football hooligan terminology. What was the Chelsea smile?
I'm not really sure about that because, funny enough, someone mentioned that the other day. I don't know whether it was on YouTube or I'd read it in a book. I don't know whether that was to give the impression that you was going to get cut. You was going to get cut with something or what, maybe. I always thought that was a Glasgow smile when I used to use razors.
Up in the north, we were hearing about the Chelsea smile.
Yeah,
perhaps that was like a scare thing that was coming up north.
Yeah, it used to be like what was the other thing? Was like the Millwall brick, wasn't it? And that was where you just get a newspaper and double it over, and that's tough, isn't it? It's a piece of wood. Paper's made out of wood, isn't it? So it was. If you got hit on the head with that or around the jaw, you would have felt it. But yeah, I never really got I'd have to ask someone that. I'm not really sure what that was about, the Chelsea smile, to be honest.
Have you watched Rise of the Foot Soldier?
Yes,
movie?
I have, yeah.
And was that an accurate portrayal of the hooliganism?
I think the chap who was in it, yeah, Carlton Leach, yeah, I'd give him credit where it's due. Yeah, he was a proper chap. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. No doubt about that.
So, as well as the life journey into hooliganism, you started out in politics on one side and then went over to the other side.
Yeah.
So let's. You actually became a young socialist, didn't you?
Yeah, and I was about 16. I suppose I was about 16, and this group of young people came and knocked on the door one night, introduced themselves. They said they was a young socialist. Never had a clue. No knowledge of politics whatsoever. That naive, all I knew was that Conservative was blue and Labour was red. I vaguely knew my mum and dad would be Labour because that's what working class was meant to be. And these young people were talking about unemployment and health, education, and I thought, yeah, I can identify with that. I'm clearly a working class kid, aren't I? Albeit I didn't even know what a middle class one was. But where I do live is Camden. It's called Camden, the borough of Camden. But it wasn't always the borough of Camden. It was actually made up of 3 different boroughs. It was made up of Hampstead, which was affluent, Holborn, which was affluent, and stuck in the middle was St Pancras. And that was clearly working class, very, very working class. And some genius thought, oh, I know, we all formed one borough. We're all equal, didn't we? Really? I don't remember noticing the fucking change. I don't remember suddenly living in the big house up in Hampstead. But anyway, it got changed. It got changed to Camden. And they invited me to a meeting which wasn't that far away from where I lived. And I think so it was a Wednesday night. And to be honest, if Tottenham was playing that night, I wouldn't have gone. But and I nearly never went. And I went along. And I walked in, and there were all these banners and things. And I thought, that's not YS, that's not Young Socialists. It was WRP, which was Workers' Revolutionary Party. Oh, I don't remember being subscribing to that. But what really struck me, none of these people looked like they was working class to me. I just discovered the middle class. And some of the words they were using, like laissez-faire capitalism, the bourgeoisie. And I joked about it in the book, and I thought, well, in this day and age, I probably think there was a couple of foreign footballers. But there weren't many about in them days, so no, it wasn't them. And I thought, well, these ain't working class people. I don't identify with these at all. Most of it went over my head, to be perfectly honest. But I persisted with these young people because they were nice people and they seemed genuinely nice, idealistic people. What I did notice during the course of this conversation, that they wasn't very flattering about the British Army, which I didn't quite get. And they started talking about Ireland. And I thought, well, what the fuck's that got to do with it? And where I lived, it was a very, very big Irish community in Camden. And I say in the book, my understanding of Irish people was they used to have some great fights outside their dance halls. And I only really identified them as getting in and out the back of Murphy's lorries, going to work. And they seemed to own quite a lot of pubs. That was it. That was my naive view of the world at 16. I mean, where politics come into it, I didn't know. I used to go into the houses of my mates. I don't ever remember any, anti-Englishness or, for that matter, any anti-Irishness. But maybe it's because I was just 16 and I was naive. So I started to go to quite a lot of meetings and rallies. Still didn't quite get in the middle class bit. And they organised a football match, tournament. That was it. Some genius had thought, do you know what? We'll get him and his mates on the up. We'll organise a football tournament. My mates weren't convinced. No, come on, what you want to get involved with all that for? I said, there's a cup. We all went over Hackney Marshes for this game of football. I said, it was a disco afterwards. They're having a disco in Mile End, which was like enemy territory, West Ham. You do not go over the East End, especially the age we were. And we go to the football match. Well, I say football, it was just fighting on the pitch. Everyone was just fighting. They're West Ham, we were top. Everyone was fighting each other. Somebody did eventually win the tournament. The organisers hadn't bought the cup. So that didn't go down well. So I tried to save the situation. Come on, we still got the disco. The disco was like a church hall or something with an old record player. That was it. No girls. There was no girls there. And I think within about 5-10 minutes, someone said there's a load of blackfellas outside and they want to kill us. So they were a lot older than us as well. And a mate broke into this kitchen area and he come back with these pathetic round edge knives. It wasn't, you couldn't have cut anything with them. But there was that bit of bravado. We've got knives. We've all got a knife now. I didn't know what to do with it. And anyway, by the time we charged, our street warriors, our working class warriors, clearly wasn't going to show any racial solidarity with us, and basically just left us to get on with it. And by the time we stormed out of this building, there was two lines of police waiting, and they'd commandeered a bus, a London bus, slung us on this bus. And there we were going down Mile End Road, being chased by all these lunatics. And of course, once you got over whatever bridge it was back in, you spun it round. It was a liberty, wasn't it? We went over there on their manor and all that. We were lucky to get out there alive. And I think my mates made it perfectly clear after that. Frank, it's the football or the politics. We ain't having both. And I just ditched it there, and then I just didn't go back again.
As well as the middle class thing, you heard that some were sympathising with the IRA, and that upset you.
That's the bit That's the bit I couldn't understand. I say that, and they were very derogatory about the British Army, and I suppose that was the first time that I kind of realised there was a sense of patriotism, if you want to call it, nationalism, whatever it, I did kind of think it did ring a bell, and I thought, hold on, what's all that about? I don't like that. But I will stress, I was politically very naive. I clearly didn't know enough of what was going on in the world. But eventually, I did look a lot closer. I did look into it a lot more,
So then you got in with the National Front. How did that happen?
I was in a pub. I was in the Lord Summers pub, and a fella came in, and I casually knew him. He worked down Smithfield Meat Market. I knew he was a big fella. He knew a lot of people. And he came in one night, and he had leaflets. Anyway, give me this leaflet. I suppose like most leaflets, put it in your back pocket. Don't ever expect to read it there. And he was quite a knowledgeable fella. We're still good friends to this day. And I don't think I read the leaflet when I got home, but I know somewhere during the conversation he'd invited me to a meeting in a hotel in King's Cross. I think that's when I then went home. At some stage I did read the leaflet, and it did strike a chord with me. And that was very much on the patriotic side. I didn't really get the white thing, if I'm honest. I didn't really identify as being white. And I didn't really identify that I've got to dislike someone because they're black or they're not white. That didn't really strike a chord with me. Anyway, I went along to the meeting, and it was totally different. It was a total eye-opener to me. The majority of these people were working class people. So I did kind of feel comfortable. Saying that, there was a mixture of football hooligans, skinheads, but there was also business people. I remember a solicitor being there. People I didn't necessarily expect to be there, judging what little I'd heard in the media. And don't forget, we haven't got the same mass media that we got now. So, and probably back then you only had probably 3 TV channels. You certainly didn't have social media. So what you read in the newspaper, you tended to believe. That was it. And I certainly wasn't led to believe that there would be these type of people at that meeting. So I was intrigued. And not long after that, there was going to be a demonstration or a march in Lewisham, which is infamous now. It was a very violent day. And suddenly mates at football started talking about going along and stewarding this march. And I said, well, you're not National Front. You're not even political. What you? Yeah, but it'd be good because it was going to kick off. There'd be a load of trouble. There'd be a load of violence. And I thought, you know what? I'm not doing that. I'm not going to get involved. So I didn't. But I know plenty of people that did go. And, again, if you go onto YouTube, it was a very, very violent day. Very violent day. And it became sort of part of folklore, whether you were left wing, right wing. But of course I saw it on the television, and I remember this older fella carrying a Union flag, and all of a sudden this black or Asian fella comes over and kicks him, gets him on the floor, and I was incensed. I was absolutely fuming, and I remember saying, I wish I'd gone, and I thought, who are these people to stop these people walking down these streets? And what really done it for me was because all of a sudden the news reporter described it as their community. And I thought, well, hold on, whose community was it before they came to this country? So I suppose I was now starting to see a difference between black and white. And that was probably the first time. But I still didn't bear any what I would have thought at the time were out-and-out racist views as such. But I did recognise I was very nationalistic and I was very patriotic and so on. And I did get involved. And being typically me, I wasn't content with just being a member. I was selling newspapers. I was putting up posters in election time. I was going on marches, going to meetings. And I invariably became the organiser for Camden. But as I say, that's typical me. Once I get involved with something, a bit like the football, it goes to extremes.
And it was the bombings that made you want to get even more involved, wasn't it?
Yeah, because London was getting bombed by the IRA. too young to really have appreciated the 1974 Birmingham pub bombings, but was aware of it. I did know that the post office tower near Tottenham Court Road had been bombed, had been blown up. So I had a little bit of more. There were more recollections than knowledge, shall we say? But then I did start to look into things, and then there would be Republican IRA parades. Okay, they might have dressed up as troops out movement. The Irish freedom movement called theirs the anti-internment parade. But we knew there was people that were on those parades. There was certainly Scottish Republican bands that were playing Irish tunes. Just put it that way. And we started to attack those and meetings and so on. And I've even come across the opposition, for want of a better way of putting it, acknowledging that I used to organise these attacks, and got more and more involved, and just got more and more. And then the more the bombings there were, and we occasionally would come across someone from Belfast, and they'd tell us things, and it just got more personal, and it got more and more personal, and eventually people wanted to do something about it. And it people in back rooms of pubs suddenly started to say, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do about it? All this chasing people up and down Holloway Road or Kilburn Road, or, what's that achieving? What's that doing? We need to do something. We need to make a statement. We need to say we're not having it. And that's when it did spiral out of hand then, definitely.
So how did you click up with the Ulster Defence Association?
What became very popular, it seemed a lot of people were wearing badges, pin badges that was kind of showing support for either the UDA, the Ulster Defence Association, or the UVF, the Ulster Volunteer Force. Magazines were being sold quite extensively, and then it started to become collecting money for Loyalist prisoners, which I used to do at Tottenham. I would go over to Tottenham, I'd sell badges, sell magazines, collect money for Loyalist prisoners. We'd heard of, none of us wanted to join the Orange Order particularly, or the Apprentice Boys or anything like that. We had no history. We were Cockneys, we were Londoners. We had no real connection with Scotland or Northern Ireland for that matter. But we knew that they had parades, so we'd go along, we'd watch those, support them, so to speak. And sometimes we know they'd be threatened, they'd be attacked. So we would also go along to act as a little bit of, we weren't invited to, we just turned up, to do a bit of security. We became aware of somebody in London who was in the Orange Order. He was from Northern Ireland, and he allegedly was either a member of the UDA or he certainly was a conduit to them. So we approached him, basically. We approached this fella. He, in turn, he actually wasn't in charge in London. He wasn't in charge, but he knew who was, and it was a Scottish fella. So myself and a very good friend of mine went to meet this fella and was thoroughly unimpressed, quite frankly. He just resembled a drunk to us. He smelt of vodka. I made it clear to the fellow we'd spoken to. I said, listen, if you think I'm putting my friends under the control of this drunk, forget it. It's not happening. They wanted to meet him. We arranged to meet him. He came somewhere one night. We met up. We could hear someone outside the door. My mate opened up the door, and there were two skinheads down outside the door. And he said, who the fuck are you? And I said, I wear Joe's security. And he said, well, you're no fucking good out there, are you? We're going to be killing him, couldn't we? So we thought, oh, this is a bit of a two-bob arrangement, isn't it? So we sort of made, I think we kind of realised at that time that, we need to kind of take over this. And my mates kind of made it clear that if we are, and if anyone's going to be in charge, Frank, it's going to be you. And it then became one of, clearly there was existing members, so we couldn't be disrespectful to them. But we did kind of make it clear, look, we just don't think you're militant enough. We just don't really feel like you kind of warrant the name, because you're not really, as far as we've not heard you've done anything. Let's put it that way. So, for want of a better way of putting it, yeah, there was a bit of a coup. Yeah.
And once you seized control, how did you increase the militancy?
Well, what we did to start off with, we had to play the game, because we were in North London and there were people in South London. We basically said to them, look, be patient, because we will be coming to the fore. We will be taking over, but we got to be careful. Don't forget, no one even knows us. So we were taking a liberty, if I'm honest. We were taking a bit of a liberty, and it was decided that the chap who was running it was stood down. So that was a case of who was going to take over in London. The fellow who was second in command, he's 2IC, clearly wanted to be in charge. So we thought, you know what, let him be in charge. Let him have the grief. We know what we're doing. But it did come to a head one night. A mate of ours came along, and he had basically, it was a catalogue of weapons that we could have access to through friends in the army. He opened it up to the man who's supposed to be in charge and said, listen, we can have this, we can get this. Good work, he said, good work. He said, yep. He said, talk to Frank about it. And another mate went, hold on, you're supposed to be in charge. If we take a dive, you take a dive. And from that moment, we knew he wasn't up to it. We could see he wanted to ride the horse, you know. More to the point, he didn't want anybody else to ride. He'd shoot the horse before someone else could get on it, you know. So we suspected this for some. So we'd said to other people, he'll trip himself up with it, and he'd done it that night. So no mobiles in those days. So 5 of us drove over to Lambeth where he lived, went in a phone box, phoned him up and said, look, we're in a pub across the road. He came in, I was sitting down with one of my fellas, 3 others were standing. He walked in, he instinctively knew things weren't right. Sat down at the table and said, I'm standing down. I said, no, you're fucking not. You're being stood down, you know. And fortunately, he didn't argue. He didn't argue, which I'm pleased about, because one of the fellas had a sawn-off shotgun on him. And I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that someone was going to kill him, but they'd have certainly crippled him to make a point, not only to him, to everybody else. We're the new kids on the block, and if we're going to arm him, what do you think we're going to do to other people? Fortunately, that didn't happen. There was no need for that. But that was the start of it. That was the real start of it, I'd say.
So guns are coming from the military, did you say?
What I am going to say at this point, there is current organisations who are still seeking information from those days, shall we say?
Okay.
There's one particular group called the Historical Inquiries Team. So, if a weapon from back then, because of new forensics to this day, can suddenly be traced back to a certain geographical area, that is equally going to potentially identify the people who was around in those days.
And there's no statute of limitations on that.
Not on that side of things. No. So I'll answer the question in the sense that yes, we and I think this is becoming more known now as well. Yes, we had very sympathetic people within the armed forces, and also information that they used to pass on to us.
So what we can talk about then in terms of the weapons, weapons were being stockpiled for your own use.
Originally, it was a case of to assist comrades over the water, you know. That was the original to start off with. That was a kind of to gain their trust. That was as if to say, well, look, you know, this is to show we are the real deal, for want of a better way of putting it. Our biggest problem at the time was you've got to take into account there were other brigades all around the country. Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, Birmingham, Coventry. And from their point of view, some of them were Ulstermen, some were Scotsmen, some, Orange Order. They had a history. They might have had family connections. They certainly had historical connections. Who were we? We were just the upstarts from London. I get it now. I do get it now. But we were determined to make our mark. So I would go along to meetings in hotels. Each area would hold a meeting every month. And we'd go into a hotel and we'd talk about things. And I used to think, who do they know is in the next room? How do they know someone's not in the next room with a listening device? How comes this fella's in charge this week and he's got this fella with him who's a 2IC? He had a different 2IC with him last month. So who's this bloke? I don't know this bloke. You think I'm going to discuss business in front of a stranger I don't even know? And I found it all a bit amateurish, to be honest. And I don't want to be disrespectful to people because I'm sure there was some sincere and dedicated people. But I wasn't convinced. And I thought, I'm not risking my liberty or my own people's liberty with these people. In the end, I stopped going to the meetings. I just said, no, I'm not having this. We're not having this. And when we did come to prominence, so to speak, we did used to go around and challenge people and say, listen, you just all talk. You've got a social club. You're in there, you're drinking, you're showing off. You're giving the impression you're something, and we're not having it. You're being stood down, and that caused a lot of friction. And I can remember going to a club one day, and me and a friend going to get back in the car, and they all pulled out the club, and I won't say which one of us, but one of us had something basically had a 9mm Brandon automatic inside their coat, and pulled it out and said, well, keep coming forward if you want, so to speak. And again, I think that kind of proved them we're not messing about here. We're not fucking about,
Did anyone pull guns on you?
No, the only time I thought someone had pulled a gun on me, again looking back in hindsight, someone had clearly tried to cause division, and it turned out that they were working for the police afterwards, for the security forces. And this fella came all the way from Liverpool. And my front doorbell went, and I used to have an inner door as well. And I looked out the curtain, and I didn't know he was coming to do me. I didn't know this. I knew there'd been a bit of bad blood. And I went to the front door, and he put his hand in his coat, and I was convinced he was ex-army. I think he'd got up to some mischief in the past. And he put his hand in the coat, and I thought, he's capable. He's no fool. And I slammed the front door, and I got to the second door, and I was going to dive on the floor. And I thought, no. He'll know to shoot down. He'll know to shoot down on the floor. He'll suspect I'm going to do that. So I stayed upright, but went up against the wall. I put my back up against it and worked my way along the wall until I could get into a room. I then heard something smash. I could hear glass smashing. And I had a downstairs bar. I had a room downstairs. It was a big old Georgian house. And I used to have a bar downstairs. And I went downstairs, and one of the panes of glass was broken. And on the floor was a wooden mallet. And I thought, you've come fucking 200 miles to come and do me with a mallet. I actually felt insulted. And I thought, well, if you was going to use it, when I opened the door, why didn't you smash me over the head with it and then tell me what was what? So my respect for him had gone like from up there pretty much down there. So I was convinced he'd driven from Liverpool. I went round to a mate's very quickly. We went somewhere. I picked something. I said, I'm going to fucking shoot him. I'm not having it. I'm going to shoot him. And I knew like the back doubles to get to the start of the M1. So I thought I'd be able to cut him off. I didn't find out till afterwards he'd come by train. So I'd kind of endangered myself a bit because I am driving around North London with this thing in the car, like, But he ran round for a few weeks after that. He was going to Manchester, Liverpool, shouting the odds. And I said to the fellas up there, I said, look, Tell him I'll meet him in Belfast. Name a day, name a time and a place. We'll meet up and we'll see who's right and who's wrong. And he disappeared off the scene. He just, the last third, he'd gone to Blackburn. But I did suspect afterwards that we'd been set up. We'd clearly been set up against each other.
Were there any other situations where you felt like your life was in danger?
I'm almost embarrassed to say this. I'd gone over to Belfast. I was due to go over to an inner council meeting, and I think it was a Wednesday. And in them days, I used to fly from Heathrow, and I was stopped by Special Branch. And they took great pleasure in telling me that I was going to miss my flight. Well, of course, people were going to pick me up from the airport. And say, no mobiles in those days. So they thought they were smart. And in them days, you had British Midland and you had British Airways. Well, they had a gentleman's agreement that if someone missed a flight, you could go to the other desk and say, listen, I've been detained, blah, blah, blah. And fair play, I was on British Midland, but fair play to British Airways. I said I was going to a wedding. And I had a bag and I said, I've got cut glass in here like for the wedding present and all that. And fair play, they got me. But I was an hour behind now, wasn't I? So I strolled back past the Special Branch. It would say, well, fuck you. You know, I'm not as late as what you've tried to make me. But of course, when I got to the airport, the people had gone. I hadn't got off that flight, the original flight. So, well, I got a bit of time to kill. So there was like a hopper bus outside. So I went into the town. I'd get a cab now. I don't to this day, don't know why I never got a cab. So I get on this, go into the town centre or the city centre, and there's all buses. Walk up and I say to the driver, I didn't want to tell him exactly where I was going because you name a geographical area and you're basically giving yourself away. And in those days, you could have been mistaken for a British soldier as well. So I said, oh, excuse me, mate, can you put me right for the Ballycilling Sports Centre? Asked someone on the bus. He went, I thought, well, he obviously don't like me, does he? So I went to the back of the bus. We're driving along. We got what they call Crumlin Road. When you get to the top of Crumlin Road, you've got a place called Ardoyne, which is very Irish Republican. I needed to go just beyond that to a place called Alliance Avenue. And there was a social club there called the Glenbryn Social Club, which the army affectionately named the Jolly Roger. We get to the top of this road, and the driver it's a single-decker bus, and he pulls over to the curb. And two fellas get on, and he shouts down the bus, where's the fella at Ballycilling? And I thought, fuck, they're IRA, these two geezers, isn't they? Somehow he's got a message to these fellas that there's a British soldier on the bus. And I remember getting up, and I had my bag, and I thought, right, I held the bag up in front of me. I thought, I've got to get down the other end of that bus as fucking quick as possible, because if one of them puts his hand in his pocket or in his coat, I'm going to launch the bag at him, try and disorient him, maybe get the gun up with him, if not, at least get off the bus. So it's all right, mate, I know where I am now. See, Wheatfield Gardens is up there on the right-hand side. Got off, I fucking walked out these ones, constantly looking behind me. Walk in the club. They're all shocked because I'm not meant to be there. They all don't think I'm coming. So all I'm interested in, I just want a pint. And I just think, fuck that. The art's going like that, you know. So I can't wait to tell them about my fantastic, you know, escape and evasion, you know, course that I've just taken. They're all killing themselves fucking laughing. I'm thinking, that's not nice. You know, it's a bit unsympathetic, isn't it? I'm thinking I'm about to get assassinated. They're all standing there laughing. I couldn't believe this. I'd forgotten that the Ardoyne bus garage was round the corner. He was only picking up two drivers. I got slaughtered. I don't know how many times that few days I was there that I heard this story. I could tell when the story was being told because I could hear people sitting at the table laughing. I knew it was me. And the next time I went over, they called me up on the stage and they presented me with a bus driver's badge. But if I'm honest, I genuinely thought my days, my time on this earth was up. I was double convinced. I'm in big trouble here. And I'll tell you what, I wasn't complacent after that. I definitely wasn't complacent after that.
So there came a point when you started to think that the intelligence agencies had infiltrated you guys and they were following you, they were harassing you. How did the mood change then in what you were doing?
Well, we met. So I was asked to go and meet someone. We met someone, and this fella convinced us that he had access to hand grenades. So we thought, blimey, you can do a lot of damage with an hand grenade, and he allegedly had dozens of them. Of course, the dilemma was you can only try an hand grenade out once, can't you? Once it's blown up, that's it. You can't use it again. So we wanted to be convinced that if they came in a box, that they were genuinely all, active, So this is where we got in touch with an old army friend of ours, and he went and had a look, and he decided, the packaging looks right, everything looks right, the pins, it all looks right, and he kind of discussed the time and the timing of them and all that when you take the pin out and all this. So it all seemed kosher. So, but the deal was we wanted to see one. We wanted to see one, active. So we knew someone who identified a quarry, a disused quarry, and there was a couple of like scrambler bikes. We thought, well, right, okay, you can get away on them much quicker than if it's a motor. So we arranged to test one of these hand grenades, and all of a sudden, one of our fellas was sure he was being followed, and we thought, hold on. So someone went back and spoke to the fellow who was going to supply these hand grenades. All of a sudden, he was really keen to sell them. And we thought, hold on, why has there been the sudden change of mood? And now all of a sudden he was saying, yeah, go on, you can. And we thought, no, there's something not right here. And years later, when I was pulled by military intelligence, they mentioned hand grenades. So we were right. We were right to be suspicious at that time. There was also an incident where we'd gone over to Belfast and we'd discuss the purchase of, it was 39 mil Browning automatics. And within a few days, we got pulled over that. We thought, well, where's that come from? Now, this was from the inner council. So we started to suspect that certain people were obviously, in the pay of the state, and we'd also probably given too much away. We shouldn't have said too much. We should have stayed local. We should have just kept things to ourselves. But we tried to test the water and say, listen, as far as we're concerned, MPs, British MPs, are eligible to be shot, bombed, as was proved in, the Grand Hotel in Brighton, that nearly wiped out, the present day, the government. And so as far as we were concerned, we were saying, well, hold on, there's existing MPs, politicians, as far as we're concerned, they support the IRA. Why are you not sorting them out? Why are you not targeting them? And I think they was horrified to think we was even thinking that way. But it's not a secret. It's not a secret. The people we were talking about at that time, and it was also, it very much looked like it was going to be a change of government as well, and that Labour were going to get in, and that could have drastically changed the status of Northern Ireland. So you had people like Ken Livingstone, you had Jeremy Corbyn, John McDonnell. They were blatantly pro-Irish Republicans. And they used to, give assistance, shall we say, to people as far as we. Well, they clearly invited the IRA to the House of Parliament, or the House of Commons. So that was our mindset at the time, and I think that was our downfall.
So were Corbyn and Livingstone targeted for assassination then?
Yeah, and McDonnell. That's the bottom line. There's no other way. There's no other way of putting it. And I think once that was, and what happened then was a very prominent member of our organisation from Belfast would come over and liaise with us. And what would happen was, for 6 months, it'd kind of be, go on, lads, well done, lads. That's more like it, blah, blah, blah. So so people would go out and do reconnaissance. People would follow these people from where they were holding their surgeries, back to where they lived, and build up that intelligence, and the equipment was there to carry it out. And then what would happen? He'd come back, and he'd say, "Listen, we got a contact in the RUC, the Royal Ulster Constabulary. He's had a conversation from Special Branch on the mainland. Apparently, they know there's a group of people who are targeting prominent politicians. So what we're going to do now, we're going to be political. We're going to go political. We're just going to challenge things politically." So people were on, people's adrenaline was going. People were on a high, and then all of a sudden it was, and this happened too many times. And eventually he got arrested because there was a very famous case of where it was claimed this fellow was just a Catholic, an ordinary innocent Catholic, and he'd been killed. A fellow called Lachlan McGinn, and people said no, he's an IRA man. And years later, the IRA eventually did claim him. But at the time, they used it for propaganda reasons and said, no, he's an innocent Catholic. The UDA are going around killing innocent Catholics. But this fella was part of these montages, these pictures that the intelligence services have passed on. We were getting them in England through our army contacts. And there were hundreds of them, literally hundreds of them. So he was identified, this fella. He was targeted and he was killed. But to emphasise that he was legit, somebody decided to paste these posters up on the walls. So certain people got arrested. While this fella was on remand, all of a sudden he stood down. He suddenly stood down and completely walked away. And an arms cache was discovered. And I know certain people think that's how he walked, because of this something. I don't know if that's true. I'm not going to cast that allegation against him. But that definitely made us sit up. That definitely made us say to ourselves, we can't talk to people over there because there's too much. And now the claim is that the security forces had so many people, in their pay. It's embarrassing. It's actually embarrassing.
In your book, you describe one of your guys, I think, that got assassinated at his house while he was getting questioned by the police.
Yeah, a very good friend of mine, Cecil McKnight from Londonderry. One morning the radio was on. We were just having a cup of tea in bed, me and my missus. And she suddenly burst into tears. And she said, "Did you just do what they said on the radio?" And I said, "No." She said, "Your mate's just been killed." And I said, "Who?" And it turned out it was this Cecil. He was being interviewed by the police in his front room, and the IRA walked up to his front room window and shot him through the window. Now, the reason it hit my wife was because she'd been to a function up in Liverpool and had met his wife, and they'd stayed in touch. So it suddenly became very personal to her. And equally it became very personal to me as well. And that was the trouble. The more people you knew that got imprisoned or had got assassinated, it just got more and more personal.
So people who want to find the rest of your story, then the arrest and the incarceration, that is in part 1 of Loyalist, Paramilitary, Gunrunner, which is at the link at the top of the description box below this video. If you want the full story in Frank's book, like I said, Gadfly Press now has published it, and in the links, it is available worldwide on Amazon, ebook, paperbook, and audiobook. There were a couple of stories that we did miss out from the prison years. If we just go over these before we finish, I asked you about famous prisoners, and you forgot to tell us that Fred West, the serial killer, was at one of your prisons.
I can't believe I didn't actually mention it. I think it's because I never ever spoke to him. I didn't actually interact with him. What happened was he came in by that time I'd gone over onto the working wing. And one day on the way over to the gym, I had passed the Cat A yard, which is not much bigger than this. And I think I'd done it more just for old time's sake. I wanted to try and see if I could see through the corrugated iron and see who was on it. And it just happened to be him. And I couldn't believe how small he was. It was a really, you couldn't believe this fella had done what he'd done. But I suppose, if he drugged people and whatever. So, so I only saw him. But, which is probably just as well, because I certainly wouldn't have wanted to mix with him. And it was quite strange because in one of the newspapers, not long afterwards, they were saying he had a television in his cell rubbish, total rubbish, But yeah, I did forget to mention him.
And there was a situation with a prison guard with a shamrock tattoo on his forearm. Told your wife that she had better hope that you didn't get bail because if you did, you were going to get shot in the head.
She conveyed that to me on the. I think this was the first visit. Was when that was behind the screen. I was still. I hadn't got open visits with her yet, and I could see she was distraught. I could see she was upset. She was with her sister. I take it to account these two had never even been in a police station before. Never mind a prison. This was all totally new to them. And as they approached the admin area to the prison, it's their first visit. And there was a big fella standing there, big screw standing there, and he had a white shirt on, short sleeve shirt. And on his forearm, he had a big shamrock. And he turned around and said, "Which one of you is Portinari's wife?" And she said, "I am." Why is that? Thinking he was going to be helpful in some way. And he turned around and said, "You hope he doesn't get bail, because if he does, he's going to get a bullet in the head." Now, I couldn't believe it. Someone who was working for the Crown, so to speak, and whose job was to look after prisoners, had a responsibility. And I was fuming. I was absolutely fuming. And on one of the occasions, I had to go to court, because every 28 days you had to be re-remanded. So you had to go to the court. And because you was double cuffed. And of course, it was sod's law. Who did I end up being chained to? This fella. Well, I just wanted to nut him. I just wanted to stick the nut on him, But you thought, well, hold on, you're in enough trouble as it is, don't. And I knew I wasn't going to get, certainly wasn't going to get bail anyway. And I thought, but I certainly don't want to get another charge on top of it for assaulting a prison officer. That's not going to be clever, especially when you're in there and you're at their mercy. So, no, I didn't do that.
So if you've enjoyed this podcast, please let us know in the comments what you felt about it. Also, in the description box are all the links to Frank's stuff, including a Facebook page he has recently set up, kind of a group. So, Frank, appreciate you coming back on, man.
We know what's coming, fellas, don't we?
We're going to rub
the hug? Is it the hug?
We're going to rub our bald heads together.
Some kind of mating thing you're doing there. Rutting, whatever they call it.
Rutting.
Yeah, oh, God.